Funny thing about trust, it only breaks once. And mine broke the night before her surgery. She didn't just steal my trust, she forged my name and nearly bought my death.
The night before the surgery, I stood in my kitchen alone. The donor consent form sat on the counter under the soft yellow glow of the overhead light. My signature was halfway there, but my hand wouldn't move. Not because I was afraid, because hours earlier I'd found something. Something that told me my daughter didn't deserve my kidney. She didn't even see me as her father. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? My name is Harold James Whitman. I'm 56 years old, born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, just 15 minutes from the old Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Retired last year from the GM parts plant after 31 years of service. I drive a silver 2004 Chevy Impala that still smells faintly of motor oil and wintergreen gum. And until last month, I was about to donate my kidney to my only daughter. Her name is Alyssa. She's 29. Always had a soft voice, a persuasive charm that could talk a brick wall into bending. Growing up, it was just her and me after her mother left. I raised her with whatever I had. After-school jobs, overtime pay, and whatever pride I could swallow. When she turned 15 and needed braces, I sold my guitar, a cherry red Strat I'd kept since high school. When she got into Ohio State, I pulled from my 401k early and took the tax hit. When her fiancé left her with debt, I co-signed the loan so she could keep her apartment. So when she told me she needed a kidney, I didn't even hesitate. The first test came back. We were a match. It was rare, the doctor said, to have compatibility this strong between father and daughter. I remember tearing up when I heard that. Of course we match, I said. You came from me. She didn't say much that day, just nodded, hugged me, and left. That was the first moment something felt off. No tears, no visible relief, just politeness, like she was thanking a stranger for opening a door. But I ignored it, because when you love someone that deeply, you overlook shadows in the name of light. The months leading up to the transplant blurred together. Blood draws, CT scans, paperwork stacked high like tower blocks. I drove myself to every appointment, paid every copay. And every time I signed another waiver, I told myself, this is what a father does. But little cracks began to show. I'd call her after appointments to update her. Sometimes she wouldn't even pick up. Other times she'd sound distracted, brushing me off. She'd say things like, "Thanks, Dad, but you don't need to keep telling me everything." Or worse, "I didn't ask you to do this. You offered." That stung, but I let it go. Parents forgive, even when it hurts. Then came the moment that changed everything. 1 week before the scheduled transplant, I was cleaning out an old drawer in the hall, the one where I keep expired car registrations and half-used pens, when I found a bank envelope marked "Return to Sender." It was addressed to me, but from a company I didn't recognize. Curious, I tore it open. Inside was an explanation of benefits from a private health insurance company I'd never used. Primary policyholder, Harold J. Whitman. Secondary beneficiary, Alyssa Whitman. I frowned. I'd been on Medicare since I retired. Why would there be a private policy, and why would she be listed? I sat down at the kitchen table, reading each line like it was written in another language. Premiums, donor complications, post-operative payouts. My gut tightened. I called the company, pretending to check my coverage. A polite woman with a headset put me on hold twice, then came back with a bright voice. "Yes, Mr. Whitman, your policy was opened 3 months ago," she said. "Comprehensive medical coverage, including organ donation and donor complication protection." My hand tightened around the phone. "Opened by me?" "According to our system, yes. Your signature's on file." But it wasn't, at least not mine. After the call, I just sat there, staring at the wall until the kitchen clock ticked me back to life. I texted Alyssa, "Call me. Found something strange." She didn't answer. Hours passed. Finally, at almost 10 at night, one line popped up. "Don't worry about it. I took care of everything. Love you." No explanation, no concern, just dismissal. That night, sleep refused to come. I went back through old papers, old emails, anything that might explain it. And suddenly, memories sharpened. 2 months earlier, she'd asked me to sign a general consent form for the hospital. We'd been at her apartment. She was making tea. I was sitting on the edge of her couch with my reading glasses slipping down my nose. I barely glanced at it. She said, "It's just a formality for the transplant unit." I signed. Now I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I drove across town to see my old friend Larry, a retired notary who now helps seniors with legal paperwork. Larry's the type who can spot a forged signature from 10 feet away. He studied the paper through his thick glasses, lips tightening. "Harold, this isn't a consent form," he finally said. "This is a release of liability document. You basically signed away your right to dispute anything that happens after surgery, financially or otherwise." My ears rang. It felt like the air left the room. I'd spent months preparing to give her a piece of my body, and she'd been preparing to protect herself. From me? I stumbled out of Larry's office in a daze. The world outside looked the same. Cars rushing down Main Street, people waiting for the bus. But it felt different, like I'd stepped into a life that no longer belonged to me. The next day, I requested the full insurance documents, using my ID and Medicare card to prove I was the policyholder. A week of anxious waiting later, an oversized envelope landed in my mailbox. I made black coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened it like it was an autopsy report. Inside, a stack of forms, and on top, a notarized signature page. My name. Her name. Clauses I didn't understand at first. Legal language about waiving rights to compensation, releasing insurers from liability, and transferring post-operative support obligations. Then I saw the timestamp. It was the exact day Alyssa had handed me that so-called general consent form. My pulse thudded in my ears. I hadn't read it because she said I didn't need to. Because I trusted her. She had tricked me. I traced the curve of her handwriting with a trembling finger, the confident loop of the Y in Whitman, the smooth flourish she'd had since middle school. She knew I wouldn't read closely. She'd counted on it. I sat there for hours. No TV, no music, just the refrigerator hum and the occasional creak of the house. I thought about every scraped knee I'd bandaged, every late night I'd worked so she could go on field trips, every sacrifice I'd made. And for the first time in my life, I saw Alyssa not as my little girl, but as someone willing to use me like a spare part and shield herself if something went wrong. When the anger finally came, it was quiet. No shouting, no throwing things, just a deep, hollow throb that sat in my chest and wouldn't leave. Questions spun in my head. Why had she done it? What was she hiding? Was it fear or something colder? And if I said no now, if I walked away, what would happen? The donor form still sat on the counter waiting for my pen. Its crisp white paper caught the kitchen light every time I passed. I'd always believed a father's love meant giving no matter what. But that night, for the first time, I wasn't sure if giving would save her or destroy what little remained of us. The next morning, I canceled the lab work without telling her. It was supposed to be the final pre-op clearance, routine blood work before surgery. Another needle, another vial, another signature. But instead of driving toward the clinic's glass doors, I turned the Impala the other way and headed downtown. Fog still clung to the edges of the freeway, gray and low like a secret that hadn't burned off yet. My wipers squeaked once and left a smear. I passed the sign for Miami Valley Hospital and kept going until the brick courthouse came into view. Montgomery County Clerk's Office. I'd never had reason to be here before. 31 years at the plant, paychecks steady, taxes done at H&R Block, house paid off slow and honest. Today felt different. I parked, sat for a second with the engine ticking as it cooled, and tried to steady my hands. They wouldn't. If Alyssa was bold enough to forge insurance forms, what else had she done in my name? Inside, the place smelled faintly of coffee and paper dust. A few people waited in line, clutching folders. Behind the counter sat a woman in a maroon sweater, with Denise pinned to her chest. She had kind eyes, but the look of someone who'd seen too many messy family stories. I slid my driver's license under the glass. Need to check recent filings tied to my property. Name's Harold James Whitman. She typed fast, long nails clicking on the keyboard. It took less than 5 minutes, but what she printed, it took me a lot longer to process. A crisp stack of white. Official stamps. My property deed. The house I'd built with my own hands 30 years ago. 2 bedrooms, small porch. Garage I'd finished myself. The place that had held birthdays, scraped knees, prom photos on the stairs. It was still under my name, but not entirely. 2 months earlier, a shared survivorship clause had been added, without my knowledge. It gave Alyssa full rights to the house immediately upon my death. No probate, no legal process. Just hers. I stared, couldn't speak. My pulse was a drum in my ears. Denise looked up. Something wrong, sir? I didn't sign this. The form was stamped, notarized, witnessed by a notary public working out of a shipping and mail drop on Route 4. I had never stepped foot there. I said as much. She only nodded, lips pressed thin. It happens, she murmured quietly, like she'd seen this play before. It was becoming clearer. To her, my kidney wasn't a gift. It was a checklist item. She was preparing for what would happen after I died, because she didn't believe I'd survive the surgery. And maybe she didn't care if I did. I walked out in a fog, papers clutched tight enough to crumple the edges. The October air hit cold against my cheeks, but I barely felt it. I drove home on autopilot, taking streets I'd driven for decades, but now looked foreign. When I got back, I didn't go inside right away. I opened the garage, shut the Impala off, and just sat there in the dim light. No radio, no heater, only the ticking engine and the muffled sound of crows outside in the bare trees. I thought about the years, Christmases where I'd worked double shifts so she could have presents. The spring she broke her leg and I slept on the hospital cot for 6 nights because she was scared of the dark. The summer I sold my beloved old Chevy truck so she could buy college books she never even opened because she changed majors mid-year. Every sacrifice flickered like slides in a dusty projector, and now she was building her future on my grave. I didn't cry, not then. Something colder slid in, like a heavy lock clicking shut inside my chest. She wasn't going to stop, unless I stopped her first. That night, the kitchen table became my war room. I pulled out receipts, printouts, every form I'd signed, hospital emails, insurance letters. I made a timeline, labeled every document in thick black marker, drew lines, connecting each fraud, the forged insurance, the survivorship clause, the fake release of liability, and that so-called consent form she'd smiled about as I scribbled my name. It wasn't random betrayal. It was a campaign, planned and executed for months. The next morning, I called the transplant coordinator. A cheerful voice answered, clearly used to routine calls. I told her I was having second thoughts. Second thoughts? She repeated, stunned. Mr. Whitman, you've been fully cleared. Surgery is scheduled in just a few days. I know, I said quietly. I'll explain in writing. I did. That afternoon, I drafted a letter, plain, factual, but lined with a fury I didn't let bleed into words. I described the forgeries, the insurance fraud, the property change. I attached copies of everything. I ended with a formal, notarized withdrawal of consent to organ donation. I mailed it certified to the hospital's legal department. The law was clear. Until the moment anesthesia hit, I had the right to back out. They would have to cancel. But I didn't stop there. I assembled a second package. This one was for Alyssa. No return address. Just a clean, plain folder, pages bound tight with a black clip. Inside, every form she'd forged, each labeled, annotated, highlighted, and on the very last page, centered, bold, 18-point font, I know everything. I sealed it, dropped it at a blue mailbox under a gray sky, watched the envelope disappear like a silent bullet. I didn't call, didn't text. Let silence do the work. The next morning, my phone lit up. 6 missed calls in a row, then a voicemail, her voice shaking, forced but trying to sound calm. Dad, I don't know what you think you found, but I swear it's not what it looks like. Please, can we just talk? I let it play out, then deleted it. 2 days before surgery, more calls. Then, nothing. Until the 3rd day, when pounding rattled my front door so loud I thought it might splinter. I opened it. Alyssa stood there, frantic, hair pulled into a messy knot, hoodie hanging off one shoulder, eyes wide and darting like a cornered animal. Dad, please, I didn't mean for any of this. I raised a hand. You forged my name, Alyssa? She froze, lips parted, breath hitched. You signed away my house. She shook her head weakly. No. You opened an insurance policy betting I wouldn't make it off that table. Silence, no denial, no excuses. Just silence that hung heavy between us. Her throat worked as she swallowed. Finally she whispered, eyes glistening but cold under the tears, I thought you wouldn't ask questions. I thought you'd do it, like always. There it was, the truth, raw and unvarnished. She wasn't sorry she betrayed me. She was sorry she got caught. I didn't speak again. I simply closed the door. Her scream came a second later, raw, frustrated, somewhere between a sob and a curse. I leaned against the wood, eyes shut, heart hammering but steady. She left. For the first time in months, that night, I slept. Deep, dreamless. But the story didn't end there. 2 days later, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. A man's voice, hesitant. Mr. Whitman, this is Jason, Alyssa's fiancé. We'd only met once, briefly. Handshake, quick hello, him looking nervous even then. She told me everything, he said, voice shaking. About the insurance, the house, the forms. I didn't know she could do that to you. I said nothing. She's not well, Mr. Whitman. She's seeing someone, a therapist. His words rushed like a man patching holes in a sinking boat. Therapy, her new alibi. I almost laughed but held it back. Jason cleared his throat. She asked me to give you something. We met at the speedway on Wilmington Pike, neutral ground. Late afternoon light slanted low across the pumps, catching on windshields. He was waiting by a white SUV, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He didn't meet my eyes as he handed me a plain white envelope. She wanted you to have this. I opened it inside my car. A cashier's check for $2,000 and a note scrawled in thick black Sharpie. You deserved better than me. It wasn't guilt. It was damage control. A way to patch the hole she'd blown through whatever was left between us. I deposited the check, not because it fixed anything, but because I'd earned every penny through the pain she'd caused. Then I did one more thing. I drove back downtown, walked quietly into the county administration building and filed a report with the fraud division. No press charges, not yet. Just a record, a mark in the system that said, this happened because people like Alyssa, they don't stop. They just pause until the next opportunity. 2 weeks passed after the day I closed the door on Alyssa. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. No footsteps padding down the hall. No phone calls asking for help. No forced, sugary laughter floating in from the living room. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car swishing past on Wilmington Pike. I tried to live as if nothing had happened, but betrayal is heavy. It doesn't just sit, it seeps. It clings to curtains, to coffee cups, to the way you breathe in the morning. Most nights I drove, aimlessly, up I-75 until the skyline of Dayton fell behind me, then across the bridge near the old Wright Pat airfield, sometimes farther out to the rural roads where cornfields turn to ice-tipped rows this time of year. Driving was the only place my hands stopped shaking. The engine's low rumble gave me time to think, time to rehearse what I might say if she came back, time to replay 30 years of signs I'd ignored. Once I allowed myself to look backward, the signs glowed like hazard lights. The tuition I'd drained my retirement for, only to find out she'd skipped classes. The credit cards I co-signed, then spent years paying off when she ducked responsibility. The vacations she couldn't afford yet somehow always took. The way she treated me like an ATM disguised as a father. Each memory returned now with a sting, reframed by the truth. She had been willing to gamble my life for an insurance payout. Then humiliation arrived. It started small. A message from Mark, an old friend from the plant. "Hey man, didn't know you were donating a kidney. Saw Alyssa's post. Brave of you." My chest clenched. I opened Facebook. There it was, a glossy photo of Alyssa beaming, taken somewhere sunny. The caption read, "Feeling grateful my dad is stepping up one last time. Can't wait to start fresh after this surgery. New house, new life. A blessed touch second chance." New house. She wasn't subtle. Hundreds of comments poured beneath, friends praising her courage, distant relatives calling me a hero. Some tagged me directly. "Harold, you're amazing." I hadn't commented. I hadn't even agreed to surgery anymore. But to the world, it was happening. She'd already cast herself as the triumphant survivor, and me as the noble fading donor. Then I saw the one that iced my veins. "Girl, you're about to come up big time. House and health upgrade? You win." And there, clear as day, Alyssa had liked it. I sat in my recliner, staring until the text blurred. It wasn't private betrayal anymore. She was parading it, building a public shield of sympathy and admiration. If anything went wrong, she'd be untouchable. The selfless daughter, the grateful survivor. I would be the naive old man who willingly gave his life. That night, something shifted. It wasn't rage this time, it was resolution. Cold, clear, deliberate. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I was going to end the performance. I called Larry. He came over with a folder of legal pads and a pot of diner coffee so strong it smelled like burnt toast. We sat at the kitchen table under the same yellow light that had once lit the donor form. The clock ticked past midnight while we talked. He showed me how to request certified copies of everything, how to notarize my withdrawal cleanly, how to file fraud alerts and so there'd be a legal trail. "Harold," he said finally, pushing his glasses up, voice low but firm, "you've got enough here to stop her play before it starts. But you have to be smart. Do it clean. No shouting matches. Paper beats noise." "I don't want to hurt her," I said quietly. The words surprised even me. "I just won't be made a fool." "Then hold every receipt," he said. "All of them." So I did. Over the next week, my dining room became an evidence bunker. I sent notarized requests to pull the notary's log for that fake survivorship clause. It came back showing a signature nothing like mine and an ID number that didn't match my driver's license. I dug up bank records proving she'd paid premiums on that secret insurance policy using the emergency savings account I'd set up for her years ago. I printed screenshots of her social posts, the smiling photos, the hashtags about Mo blessed and dotched second chance, the laughing reaction to the comment about her big win. I didn't sleep much, but there was a calm in the work, a steadiness I hadn't felt in months. For once, I wasn't stumbling behind her schemes. I was ahead. One gray afternoon, I drove to the hospital under the pretense of updating contact info. The transplant coordinator, same warm smile as before, met me in her small office lined with health brochures. I slid a thick folder across her desk. She flipped pages slowly. Each turn seemed to drain the color from her face. Finally, she looked up, careful and grave. "Mr. Whitman, these are serious allegations." "They're facts," I said. My voice didn't shake. I'm revoking consent, and I want it formally noted why. She nodded, left to call legal. It took an hour of hushed conversations and paperwork, but when I walked out of that building, I carried a stamped acknowledgement. Surgery canceled. Donor status removed. No way back unless I applied again. I didn't tell Alyssa. Let her find out the hard way. That night she left a voicemail, voice syrupy but hollow. Hey Dad, just making sure you're okay. I'm working on getting everything lined up financially for your recovery. I want to help. She didn't know the surgery was dead. The next morning a letter arrived from the county. A simple bureaucratic envelope. My fraud alert had been accepted. They'd opened a file. Quiet, unremarkable, but powerful. If she tried to use my identity again, alarms would ring. Then came the final straw. I was hauling trash cans to the curb when Mrs. Hampton, from 2 doors down, waved cheerfully. Heard about Alyssa's new house, she said brightly. So sweet of you, making sure she's set up once you're gone. Gone. The word punched the air out of me. She was telling neighbors I wasn't expected to survive, that this was my last act. The cold inside me sharpened to steel. That night, under the hum of the kitchen light, I wrote a 1-page statement. Clear, factual, no theatrics. Each fraud listed in plain language, each document cited, each deception named. I ended with one line. I revoke my consent to donate and denounce any property or insurance changes made without authorization. I signed it before a notary, then made 4 copies. 1 for the hospital's chief legal officer, 1 for the county fraud investigator, 1 for Jason, her fiancé, and 1 for Alyssa herself. No note, no explanation, just the truth. I mailed 3 certified, slipped Alyssa's into a plain envelope, and dropped it at the post office slot. The next morning, Jason called, voice tight, almost shaking. Mr. Whitman, she's losing it. She says you're trying to ruin her life. I'm just telling the truth, I said. She told people you were dying, he whispered, that this was your wish, that you wanted her to have everything. I let silence answer. She's scared, he added softly after a beat, and angry, but scared more. Good, I thought. Fear might be the first honest feeling she's had in years. 2 days before the scheduled surgery, she appeared again. No baggy hoodie this time. She came dressed sharp, makeup done, blazer pressed, as if a polished look could still salvage what she'd burned. She didn't knock, just opened the door and stepped in like she owned the space. My pulse quickened, but I stood my ground. You don't have to do this, she said, voice tight but trying to sound calm. You don't have to ruin everything. I'm not ruining anything, I said. You did that. You're overreacting. I was just protecting us. Making sure. Protecting yourself, I cut in. Steady. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Her eyes darted like she was hunting for an angle that no longer existed. I let the silence stretch until it hurt. Then, the hospital knows. The county knows. Jason knows. Everyone you lied to will know soon enough. Tears welled, but they looked practiced, polished. A performance she'd rehearsed for years. Dad, please, don't leave me like this. I'm not leaving you, I said, voice level. I'm finally standing up. She flinched just slightly, then spun, grabbed the door, and slammed it hard enough that the frame rattled. For the first time, I didn't flinch. I knew she'd scramble now, try to salvage her image, spin the story, cast herself as a victim. But the truth was rooted deeper than her lies this time. Legal, documented, unshakable. The morning the surgery was supposed to happen, I didn't wake to prep or fast or ride quietly to the hospital. I slid into the Impala instead and drove, past the exit where the hospital loomed, past billboards with cheerful kidney donation slogans, onto open highway. The winter sun hit the ice-crusted trees, turning them to silver. The road shimmered faintly with thin frost, but it was empty, peaceful, like the world was holding its breath. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Unknown numbers, probably family gossip. Maybe Alyssa spinning a fresh tale. I didn't look. I just drove. I didn't hear from her for a week after that final door slam. No calls, no messages, not even the guilt-riddled emails she used to send when she thought I might still give in. But I knew something was brewing. People like Alyssa don't stay quiet unless they're busy spinning a new story. On the 8th day, the letter came. Certified mail. Plain white envelope. Return address. A law office I'd never heard of. My stomach sank as I slid a finger under the flap. Inside was a single packet on crisp letterhead. A formal request for property verification. Her name was there in neat black print, attached to a claim that Harold Whitman had verbally and contractually agreed to transfer sole ownership of residence following scheduled organ transplant. They were still trying, still clawing at a house I was very much alive to protect. But now I had proof. I grabbed my coat, the folder of withdrawal documents, and the fraud report number from the investigator's file. I didn't even make coffee. Just drove. The county building loomed gray and square against a pale winter sky. Inside smelled of paper, printer toner, and wet boots. A clerk with a calm face and silver glasses, not Denise this time, took the papers from me and scanned the letter. She read in silence, eyebrows drawing tighter with each page. Then she looked up. She's trying to execute a survivorship clause under false pretenses, she said evenly. I nodded. I need to make it permanent. By the end of the afternoon, I'd filed a formal challenge to the deed alteration. The fraudulent clause was frozen. Any attempt to enforce it would now trigger a legal stop. The notary on record, the one who'd stamped that original change, was already under investigation for document fraud. And Alyssa, she'd just exposed herself again, in writing, through a lawyer. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to show up at her door, didn't need to be the angry father. I let the paperwork speak. Then something unexpected happened. Jason called. But this time his voice wasn't nervous. It was sharp, controlled, angry. She tried to move in with me, he said, no greeting, words spilling fast. Said you kicked her out. Said you were abusive, manipulative. Told me I didn't know the real you. I let the silence stretch. He filled it. Then I found your documents, all of them. She left them in a folder in the back of her car. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she thought I wouldn't look. He had looked. All this time I thought you were just old-fashioned, quiet, maybe a little stubborn. But this? His voice trembled. This is cold. What she did to you? That's not just wrong. That's dangerous. He took a breath, shaky but firm. I broke off the engagement, told her I want nothing to do with her. She screamed, cried, tried to say it was all lies. What did you say? I asked quietly. I said, the receipts don't lie. I closed my eyes. For a long moment, all I heard was the hum of the line in my own heartbeat. Her web was unraveling, not because I'd shouted or begged, but because I'd stayed steady, documented, and let her trap herself. 2 days later, the hospital called. The transplant office, legal division this time. A formal internal review had finished. They'd updated my patient record, donor consent rescinded due to suspected fraudulent medical and insurance activity. That wasn't just a footnote. That was a warning beacon. Hospitals talk. Insurers talk. The shadow would follow her. I printed the update, slid it into a new certified envelope, and sent it to the same law office that had dared to challenge me. No threats, no comment. Just a single clipped cover sheet. Per updated hospital record and legal filings, all previous claims are void. Further attempts may be treated as criminal fraud. Message delivered. The next time Alyssa reached me wasn't a call, wasn't a knock. It was a post. Facebook again, but different this time. No makeup, no glam filter, just a raw close-up of her face. Eyes puffy. Captioned, sometimes people you trust the most turn on you. Sometimes even family makes you feel like you're nothing. I'm taking time away from everything. No one liked it. No comments. The thread hung silent, like a stage after the audience walks out. Her final attempt to flip the script, to cast herself as the victim. But this time, the crowd wasn't buying it. I didn't reply, didn't like, didn't even open it again. Instead, I went to the hardware store, bought a new deadbolt for the front door, heavy, brass, solid, weather stripping for the drafty windows, and a fresh nameplate for the mailbox. Just my name. Clean. Unshared. The young clerk rang me up and asked casually, "How's it going today, sir?" I smiled. Small but real. "Better. Getting the house in order." He nodded. "Good to hear. Cold's coming fast." He had no idea. The last step was back at the county office one more time. I stood at a counter with a weary civil clerk and signed a protective order on the deed. New regulation requiring in-person identification and fingerprint verification for any future change. No more loopholes, no more forged signatures, no more strangers carving my life away while I wasn't looking. This house, like my body, was no longer hers to take. I walked out into the brittle winter air and sat in my car, let the engine idle while I looked out over the steady stream of traffic on 3rd Street. For a brief, sharp second, I thought about everything I'd lost. Trust, innocence, the comfortable lie that blood means loyalty. But then I thought about what I still had. My life, my home, my dignity. She hadn't taken those. She never would. I put the car in gear and rolled toward the road, tires crunching over old salt. The sky above had been gray all week, but now it cracked. Just a break, just enough. Sunlight spilled through, cold but clean, cutting across the windshield and lighting the dashboard in gold. I turned up the heat, cracked the window to let the sharp winter air bite my cheek, and I drove. I didn't hear from Alyssa for almost 2 months after the hospital flagged her record. Not a word, not a text, not even a card at Christmas. And truth be told, I didn't expect one. There's a kind of silence that comes after truth breaks through the noise. It doesn't ask for permission. It just settles in. Heavy, but honest. The holidays passed quiet that year. No gifts under the tree. No visitors asking for seconds of ham or cups of cider. Just me, a single string of lights on the porch railing, and a rented DVD from the corner red box. But I wasn't sad. Not really. Because peace, even when it's empty, is still peace. Somewhere around January, I heard she'd moved to Cincinnati. A mutual friend mentioned it casually over coffee at the VFW hall. "Word is she's staying with some college friend," he said, stirring sugar into his mug. "Not doing much. Off social media. Lost her job too, I think." I nodded, but didn't comment. If she was falling apart, I wouldn't celebrate it. But I wasn't going to save her either. That part of me, the rescuer, the fixer, the man who bent backward for her comfort, was gone now. And I didn't miss him. I spent my mornings walking the trails behind the old dam. Used to take Alyssa there when she was little. She'd climb on the rocks, toss pebbles into the water, call it her thinking spot. Now it was mine again. No voices asking for help. No guilt pressing behind my ribs. Just the wind through bare branches and the steady crunch of my boots on gravel. I started fixing things around the house, too. Replaced the squeaky hinges on the basement door. Repainted the shed. Rewired the porch light I'd been ignoring for 6 years. There was something grounding about it, like reclaiming territory one screw and brushstroke at a time. One gray February afternoon, a letter arrived, handwritten. No return address. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Inside were 3 uneven lines. "I still don't know why you gave up on me. I was scared. I made mistakes. I wish you'd seen that instead of turning your back. No apology, no admission. Just a mirror turned the wrong way, asking me to see her pain while ignoring mine." I didn't reply, didn't tear it up either, just folded it once and slid it into the kitchen drawer with the old warranty manuals and expired coupons. That's where it belonged, tucked away, irrelevant, slowly fading with time. About a week later, the phone rang. A woman's voice, polite, professional. She introduced herself as part of the transplant unit, checking in on post-donor status. She didn't know I'd canceled. I told her everything had changed, that I wasn't a donor anymore. There was a pause, then a quiet, careful question. Do you want us to remove you from the National Registry too? I stood there, staring at the old yellow notepad by the phone, the one where I used to scribble appointment reminders and medication notes. For a moment, the old version of me stirred, the man who would have said no just in case someone else needed saving. But now? Yes, I said softly. Take me off the list. It wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. My body was mine again. That night, I slept without the heaviness I'd grown used to. No phantom pain. In my side, where surgeons once mapped the incision, no guilt dreams. Just the hum of the furnace and the soft creak of the house settling into itself. Like me. Spring came slow that year, the first shoots pushing up through frost-cracked soil. Dogwood buds out back, stubborn and quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't absence, but healing. One morning, coffee in hand, I watched the mailman come up the drive. New bills, an AARP flyer, and one thick envelope from a law firm. I opened it cautiously at the kitchen counter. Inside was a settlement notice. The insurance company had finalized its internal fraud investigation. They were terminating Alyssa's policy, and they'd flagged her account for suspicious claims, pending further inquiry. A single bold line stood out. No further donor-related disbursements authorized under policy ID 980043A. Initial authorization proven to be based on forged consent. It read like a legal obituary for the person she pretended to be. I filed it away, not as revenge, as closure, because now there was a paper trail, a footprint on the road she thought no one was watching. I never went public, never posted my side online, didn't call relatives to explain or defend. I didn't need to. The people who mattered had already seen the truth. Jason stopped by once, months later, brought a 6-pack of root beer and a bag of pork rinds. We sat on the porch talking about the Reds' chances that season, the weather, small things that feel big when life's storms have passed. Not once did he mention her. As he stood to leave, he looked at me, long, searching, and said quietly, "You know, you handled that better than I ever could have." I didn't answer, just nodded. Because sometimes the quietest victories are the ones that last the longest. Now, when I drive, it isn't to outrun anything. I just drive, past the cornfields, through the back roads where the trees lean in like old friends, over bridges humming with wind. I keep the window cracked, even in the cold. Let the air bite my cheek. Let the silence fill my ears. Not the silence of betrayal. Not the kind that follows a slammed door or a broken trust. This one's different. This one's earned. It feels like peace. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.